Now it says I'm live. Okay, and the best way to go to that.
There we go.
Are we good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sweet. Stream status, it says, we're not doing good, man. Whatever. I don't want to go 1080 anyway, but hey, it's what they're telling me to do, so I'm doing what the machine says. And so I guess we'll start that all over again. So it's Irate Prostate here, and I am for the third time going to say that I'm hanging with Big Fat Brian, and
what's going on, guys?
And we're talking specifically movies on Netflix, and specifically horror and sci-fi movies. And like I said earlier, we're going to focus on stuff that we consider to be good. We're not going to even think about coming close to promoting bullshit and shitty movies for you guys, because we want you to be blown away by what you see. We don't want to waste your time. I don't want my time wasted, and I know Brian doesn't want his time wasted.
Yeah, definitely not.
Even though I've wasted the last hour and a half of his time, but trying to get this motherfucker going. But hey, man, that's the lovely part about life, isn't it? So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull up the layout that we're seeing right for the movie The Ritual. And this is a British film that's been promoted by Netflix. It came out this year. Brian, you got anything you want to talk about? Any observations?
Well, okay. So why don't we give a little scenario for those that may not have seen the beginning of this? I know there's probably going to be a couple of spoilers, but it's still a good film, whether or not there's some spoilers. The Ritual is a film based off of a group of people that decide to go to a different country and eventually end up in the woods and hiking, and they get lost. So the reason we're doing a compare and contrast on these two films is because they sort of have a similar plot line.
Right. Yeah. What I did when I saw this movie, I thought to myself, this is like Deliverance meets The Wicker Man. In kind of a strange way. It reminded me of both films, just in the way it looked and the way it was. You've got these guys that are out of their natural environment, and they're in the woods. They're in with nature. It's predicated that they're going to eulogize their friend that was killed in this bar accident. The movie opens up with them all drinking together. It's like, a lot. I mean, there's been tons of movies that have opened this way. You've got four friends, dudes. They're talking shit to each other, talking about each other's little dicks and shit. They're drinking, and then they decide to leave. And one of the guys wants to get a bottle of some harder shit. They've been drinking beer primarily, and his friend goes in with them. It turns out that the store is being robbed, and the main character freezes up and watches his friend get killed, and that's the what I want to say. That's the friend that they're eulogizing, right? They go to Sweden because they had talked about in the bar to go to a place out of the country, and they were nixing it. Everybody was for it, but except for the main character, who's the guy that froze up. So they go for it.
Wrench me.
Oh my God! We got to wrench somebody. We got to
wrench me. I'm in the chat, like the second comment down.
All right, you got it, bro. Is that T-Tac?
That is T-Tac. And Dr. Jordan Pepperson, or wait, Pickleson. Sorry, not Pepperson.
What's he, man? Dr. Jordan Pickleson? Pickle yourself, my friend. Now get cool. Yeah, LMAO, you're OBS. I'm with it. I'm with you. It's a little. It's not perfect. Neither am I. So anyway, so they decide to go to Sweden, right? And eulogize their friend, and they do that. They have their little ceremony, and so.
Yeah, they have their ceremony. I do want to touch on a point before that, though. When they are in the liquor store and his friend gets killed, he gets his head bashed in. The secondary friend that is there that freezes up. He doesn't just freeze up. He gets behind an aisle and like hides while his friend is begging for help as he gets his skull bashed in.
It's fucking coward. He's a fucking coward.
Super cowardly, yeah.
Yeah.
And that sort of sets the tone of the story, is that as his friend wanted to go out on this hike to this specific place in the country they were in, and as a symbol of, I guess maybe their undying friendship for him, even though he was a coward, they go out to where his friend was wanting to go, and they bring, what was it, a trinket of his or something? Was it?
Yeah, it was like a scarf. It was like it was a scarf and a picture of him, and I think they put a couple of coins on it or some shit like that.
Yeah, and they place it on this pile of rocks, and then they decide to go back to the village, but they take a shortcut through the woods, which is never a good idea, but is usually an epic opening for most horror movies.
Right. And what happens is it starts getting dark, and they notice this cabin. They go into the cabin, and it's kind of creepy. And they go up and they find this weird looking wicker figure sitting in a chair with these like antlers for hands and shit. Looks like creepy and fucked up, right? And while they're in there, the guy that from the robbery, he kind of relives it. There's a scene where he's pretty much he's asleep, I guess, and everything freezes, and then it's like he's in that store again. And then he there's some kind of thing where reality kind of fades in and out for this dude, and he keeps going into that store for some reason. And that's kind of one of the problems I had with this thing. Is like I couldn't tell exactly what they were trying to tell me with that, because there's I guess the multi faceted aspect of it. It's I guess you could go with that. You know what I'm saying? But it's like I'm not sure. What do you think, Ryan?
Well, it seemed like a little bit of deep-seated storyline that they were trying to insert so that you had an emotional connection to all of the characters.
Right.
Sort of like they were great friends, and he felt so horrible about it, and he felt guilt that he had let his friend die in the way that he let his friend die. But to be honest, from my point of view, it didn't really connect me to the character all that much. It sort of just made him seem more like a pussy.
Right, exactly, and he's a very unlikable character, which is I don't know if that was the whole point of it, and maybe it was, but I mean it worked if that's what the point was, in my case. It's just he wasn't a very likable guy at all, and so they're in the woods, and they see this fucking like it looks like a reindeer that's been impaled between these two trees, and it's been gutted, and its guts have been torn out, and then of course they stay in that cabin, and then they go, I know, Jordan, I heard the click too. That was me. I was just trying to help my CPU out here. God. Dude, you are a ball buster, man. But I like you. Okay, I like that. I can handle it. Much love, Jordan Pickle Jordan.
Jordan,
Jo-
Jordan Pickle Jordan.
Jordan Pickle Jordan. But okay, so these dudes. All right, so they're freaked out. They want to get the fuck out. It's kind of like a Blair Witch thing. After that, they're lost in the woods, and one of their buds, fucks his knee up, so they have to carry him. It's going to slow him down, of course. And then they realize as now the frames are starting to catch up with the story here, and you'll see that they look up and they see their friend has been crucified, much like that reindeer had been, and he had disappeared from the cabin overnight, and so they find him dead, and they're all flipping out, and they take him down, of course, and bury him. I guess it's like it's not really clear exactly what they do with that either.
No, not very. But at that point, doesn't one of their friends like either twist his ankle or no? That was earlier on.
Right, he fucked his knee up. Right, like I said, it was like his meniscus. He said he had torn an ACL before, and so he said he recognized he was some kind of like a. He didn't look very athletic to me, man.
No, he looked like the whiny one of the group.
Right, exactly.
Which is sort of sad because the other one's a pussy.
So Wild Tanuki or ABC, did either of you all see this movie too? So Tanuki says the ritual was eight. And I don't know. I kind of came to a similar conclusion. So we're at the point where, they found the friend, and they're gonna, they take him down. He's the most athletic and the most alpha of the bunch, in my opinion, and it looks like he's the first one to go. And then so they're all freaked out, and they're very dismal, so they're going through the woods. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for the Wikipedia entry there in the side there. And then at this point, it gets it kind of reminded me of the Wicker Man, because it seemed like no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't get out of the woods, and it looked like they were being directed, whether it was consciously or unconsciously, to a specific place that takes them, to this lighted path. And so,
I would say definitely, it very much felt like the noises in the forest and the way that everything was sort of pushing them in a general direction, and they end up at a village.
Right.
Now, meanwhile, they've seen this thing that's got like huge hooves in it, and it's really ridiculously tall, and it's sort of off in the distance and very hard for them to see, but it's scary as shit, and they keep running from it. And they get to this village where everyone is acting really ridiculously weird.
Right, and there's all these runes written everywhere. The old it looked like that their religion was like a pre-Norse mythology era pagan religion, right?
Yes.
That's what I got out of it, and so they capture the guys. And they immediately fuck one of them up, and then they stick the other two. I guess the guy that's supposed to be the main character, the coward that froze up in the convenience store, and then his friend. They go out and prepare him. Yeah, and he had been stuck on the chest with this weird design. It looked like a mark of like 5 things in his chest, right? And then this old lady, one of the villagers showed her that she had the same mark, but it looked like a swastika on her chest. Did you notice that, man?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it almost, what it really reminded me of, if you've ever seen Berserker, it reminded me of like the little demon markings that they were putting on people, so to mark them as theirs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that was an old belief that, like a patch of hair or, some kind of scaly patch of skin, that was like the mark of devil, the mark of evil on people.
Yeah.
And they would get singled out by the town if some shit was going wrong. They had a bad crop or something. Usually those motherfuckers ended up dead or some shit. They're quick to want to rectify that shit, and they'll blame anybody to do it. That's the way we are as humans.
So now that we're at the halfway point of the ritual so far, how would you rate the plot hook, which was the friend dying, and the idea to go into the woods? How did you feel like it was believable? Did you feel like it was something that seemed somewhat logical based off what was going on, the fact that their friend had twisted his ankle and he had to get to medical help as soon as possible? Or did it feel slapped together with tape?
It seemed like to me like it was the end trying to the means trying to justify the end. In other words, they had what they wanted the end to look like first, and they created everything else to get there, right? Because that whole storyline with the convenience store, it just it was actually a great little hook for telling a different story, I think. But for this story, I thought it was like, what the fuck? It was like one of those things, and then it kept going back to it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm completely agreeing with you on that, because the thing to me that really I didn't think that it really made a whole lot of sense that somebody who's so much of a pussy that he would hide behind an aisle while his friend got his head bashed in would walk into a forest with like no path or anything. It didn't seem logical to me. With that being said, the acting up until that point was great. Not was great, but is great, and I sort of felt like the rest of the movie was pretty good acting as well. But I do completely agree with the fact that the beginning of the movie, if they were trying to build maybe a drama or something, then it would have made a whole lot more sense. But it's a horror movie. They could have done a completely different hook and really pulled you into it. But really, you're just like, okay, well, that guy's a pussy, and now they're going out to a grave site for their friend, and that's really it.
Well, yeah, and my part, and that's exactly right. It was all of it was forced up until that ending part, and the whole deal about burn it down and that shit. That made all kinds of sense to me. Mm-hmm. Because he went in that one room and it looked like those were like actually the effigies of the people that were there. In other words, what did you think that shit was?
Why don't we explain? Because I have a feeling that a couple people here haven't seen the movie.
Right.
Basically, when they got to the town,
yeah, the little village. It's a real small, like medieval looking village. I mean, it really looks not very progressed.
Yep. And everyone, they look all gaunt and pale, and they look like they churn butter and put up barns like the Amish almost.
Right, exactly, man. It's that kind of deal where they're almost it looks like you don't see a machine. No, there's not even a fucking tractor or anything like that. Not even like horse and buggy era type farm equipment. There's nothing even of that scale of mechanics, right?
Exactly.
It's all pre-industrial era, is what it looks like to me. It looks like late Iron Age, possibly, or post Bronze Age. It's somewhere in there. But their clothing was all generic enough to look like you know, you don't know exactly, you know, what era that they're from either.
Yep.
And so, and there's like, it looks like there's like maybe 25 people in the whole village. Tell me what you thought about that. There was that old woman, and then a bunch of dudes, and then that other chick. Not many chicks.
No, not many. I thought that was actually adequately creepy, though. You know, the people didn't look friendly, and they certainly weren't friendly. And they set up that, you know, they had those two guys chained, and then they set that one guy up as a ritual offer to the weird beast thing in the forest that was chasing them to this village. And they did a really good job of making that look realistic in the sense that the guy, when he was screaming, he wasn't like, oh no, you know. Well, it was real terror that you felt that he had.
Right, exactly, because at first it looks like he's seeing his wife. And the wife comes up to him, and it's like he's like kind of like going, what? And then it's like, oh yeah, baby, how are you doing? And then it like kisses him, and then it pulls back, and it's like these like fake eyes looking at him that are glowing, and he screams out in terror, and then the thing just rips him off where he's tied to, and just, you know, pops him on a tree like he's like, you know. I don't know how to describe it. What was that thing? Like a peg? He used it like a peg. He just popped the guy on there like a meat hook or some shit, right? And just tagged him on the tree. Like, all right, you're there. I'm going to dry you out and have some beef jerky later, I guess, or some shit.
Well, yeah, and here's the part where we get into the idea of a horror movie having subtlety, but in this case, maybe a little too much subtlety, because at one point they mentioned that this beast is a god, right?
Right.
But they don't really explain that the offering is, you know, like to give the god power or anything like that. They don't really. That's about it. The explanation is it's a god. And you sort of get the idea that the people in the village don't really know until the second character, who's locked up, comes across a room of these fossilized mummies of the bodies of the villagers, and he proceeds to burn down the what was it? The barn or the?
It was just a building. You know, it was a general. It's just your generic building that was, you know, made out of wood. You know, wood frames. You know, wood roof. You know, et cetera, et cetera. And those things were like, you know, they look like a cross between some type of paper mache doll and some kind of dried up, fucking shriveled up people, which I thought was really weird, man. And that was creepy too, man. The way that they were like going, you know, it's like, what the fuck are those things? Stuff. Yeah, it's like, what in the fuck are those things? Are those supposed to be what the people really are, and that the things walking around are like what the God has given them or something, you know?
Exactly.
See, and what I thought the whole point was that the dude lived is because he was a coward, right? Because they told him, they said, you need to bow down before this dude, right? Before the God. Yeah. And I think that's why it had marked him, because it knew that he was a coward, because it kept showing him that scene in the store. That's the only way this shit made sense to me, all right? Because, you know, watching it the first time, you know, it was like it was a lot easier to buy than the second time, because I started questioning the storytellers, and I wasn't getting the kind of answers that I liked. Not like the second movie that we're going to talk about, which the more I watch that, the more I like it.
Yeah. Well, before we finish up with that, the first movie, and this is my theory on the first movie, that they were going with the idea. Have you ever read the book American Gods?
I haven't read the book. I'll be honest with you. I've got it, and I started it, but I hadn't completed it.
Okay, well, in American Gods, the idea that gods are given power by their worshippers is sort of the primary idea,
Right.
and that would also explain why they're doing the rituals, because in American Gods they do blood sacrifices, and that gives more power to the god, and the less people that believe in the god, the less powerful the god.
Yeah, that's right.
uh, which also makes sense with, spoiler alert, the ending. And the ending of the movie is where one of the guys, specifically the guy that's a pussy and stands behind the aisle while his friend gets his head bashed in, uh, leaves. Brian, Irate, T-Tac, and Tanuki. Hey. Oh, we got the next 6 minutes in the chat. But yeah, the guy that's a pussy,
Hey, dude.
leaves the forest, and he gets away from this godlike thing after burning down basically the whole village with all those bodies inside. And the only way I can think of that this guy gets away from this really long-legged, really tall, four-legged, creepy god thing is that there's not enough believers to give him enough power to pursue the guy who's a pussy. In fact, at that point, he might be the only believer in that god.
Well, think you're right, because he's burnt that. Right, because I think he's destroyed the worshippers when he burned that building up that had those things in it. So maybe, go ahead.
Keep in mind, this is all theory. Like, this is not explained in the movie at all.
No, it's like what the fuck. Yeah, that should be the title of this movie. Is what the fuck is this ritual? And why? It's because it's a little bit maddening. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to this for a second. I don't know if you'll see it, but it'll pop up. I'm on the Frozen card, so I can get back into the. Well, I can't do that now, can I? So what do you? Are we pretty much done talking about the ritual for now?
Yep, that would be the ritual right there.
All right. And I give it out of 10. All right. And this is IRATE's, like, I'm only going to give a 10 to the really, really good shit. I give it a 6.5. On the first seeing, almost a 7, but not quite. I don't know. What do you give it, dude?
I was debating a 6 or a 7, so 6.5 is actually perfect.
All right, killer.
I was like, I don't know what, 7 is, to me, a 7 is roughly average. I know everyone would think a 5 is average, but no, 7 is average. Anything below 5, don't watch it.
I'm not watching. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Same with chicks. So, put that.
There we go.
See, but yeah, I was going to say, this, like, see, that's proof that we should cuddle now. After this, I'm just kidding, everybody. We're totally straight.
He's not kidding. We're going to cuddle later.
Okay, and
I'm just messing with you, man.
Same here. All right, I'm going to go back to blank and then start it over again. All right, and nope, that didn't do it. Well, okay, so I don't know how to get this to start at the beginning, because it should have started at the beginning. I don't know. Let's see if I can.
Is there a way to, like, go all the way through it and then back to the beginning?
Hold on, that's what I was about to say. Whoops. Whoa, hello.
Well, why don't I give the audience the premise for the temple as well, which is in the movie The Temple. William's Tenchover wants cheese fries. Well, anytime, William. But in the movie The Temple, basically, this woman and her best friend are going to Japan to see the woman's boyfriend. And yes, the main character, the dude, that she's best friends with is totally beta. So there's your first comparison to the movie The Ritual. It starts out with a guy who's totally beta. But you know, the whole time they're running it like a vlog. He's filming this girl, and they get to Japan and they find an ancient Japanese bookstore that has all these really cool little knickknacks and stuff. And
okay, we're at the beginning.
Okay, perfect. Yes. So as you guys can see on screen right now, there's the girl, and they photograph each other back and forth, and they find this weird little handbook that talks about a temple. Of course, the guy who's beta is a weeboo, sorry, so he can speak and read Japanese.
Right.
And so he takes this book to the merchant that's in the store, and she's like, "No, you can't have this book. It's evil or cursed or something like that, something along those lines." And so he leaves the store. The girl, of course, says she really wants that book, and because he's sort of beta and he's clearly in love with the girl, later on he goes and he picks the book up from the store. He goes into the store, he sees this little kid, and he's like, "Oh, here's some money for the book," and he takes it and goes. And that begins their journey, where her boyfriend and this guy decide to go on a hike up to the temple in the woods. So, right there, I'm already gonna say that the movie has a better hook than the Revenant. The Temple has a much better hook because at least the storyline makes sense. You know, they have a reason to go into the woods rather than, hey, this is a shortcut.
Right. You know, and so. All right, if you can see, we're right at the very beginning of the film, and it opens up with that. With actually, let's back it up a little bit. With this old man, and this looks like you don't know what he is. He's like, is he a cop or is he a psychologist or whatever? And there's this chick pushing a wheelchair, and it's got this tent over it, this little clear plastic tent. And it makes you go, what the fuck is going on with this dude? What's going on? So he pulls him in, and he asks him if he knows where he is. And he says, I don't know. Is this a hospital? And he says, yeah, it's something like a hospital. And the translator is this younger guy that I've seen him in a couple of things too. So these actors look like American actors. This looks like a good Japanese and American team movie. So I really like the way it looked. I really like the way it was filmed. It's got kind of the mystery is the creepiness exceeds the mystery for me. Okay.
Yes.
Right. The atmosphere is like, it's like there's something fucking just off about it. Even the titles, when you're watching the titles, there's just something fucked up about them. The way that they've got this weird kind of layering going on, and it looks like a statue might be moving or something, but you can't really tell. Or is that a trick of the light or what?
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of that kind of shit. Mm-hmm. Nice visual play. I think they did a whole lot with a small budget. And that tells you that, we're dealing with the creative, with the team. The director and the writer are brothers. It looks like they have the same last name. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Simon and I want to say William Everett Barrett. My bad. William and Simon Barrett. Right. And so it opens up. This old guy starts asking the the being in the wheelchair in the tent who looks like he's been it looks like a burn victim or some shit, right?
Yeah.
And he says, "Do you know who you are? Do you know where you are?" And then he starts showing him this. He takes a laptop or a tablet, and starts showing him this video of this girl, and then I like the way it really did this, because it really just kind of pulled you in without you really realizing it. Is that first you're looking at a guy looking at a computer screen, and then all of a sudden you're watching the movie. You're in the movie, right?
You're in it.
Yeah, and that was a really kind of a nice trick to pull you in. Go ahead.
They did a great job with the mystery at this point too, because they didn't say any names. They asked, "Do you know who this person is?" And that was it. They didn't they didn't try and give you any hint as to what was going on. It was clear that they were just trying to get information out of the guy in the wheelchair. And go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep going, because you're there, brother.
And the guy in the wheelchair, he looks like some sort of burn victim or something. All of his skin is peeled and roughed up, and he just looks. There you go. He looks gross as shit. And the video footage is of those two main characters that I was talking about, the beta guy and the girl, who are sort of like vloggers, and when they get to Japan, they meet the boyfriend, and that's what they're watching. And so you guys already know that they got a book, and they are on their way up to this temple. I don't know if you have that in your slideshow, where we're at.
Okay, it's right where they're showing him the laptop with the chick on it, and she's a really beautiful girl. She reminds me of this 70s actress named Martine Bestwick, British actress. That the best movie that she was in was a Hammer production called Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, in which she played Sister Hyde, and he would take the it was Dr. Jekyll, of course, but with a twist, it would turn into a woman who was evil and shit. And she played the evil woman, and she looked almost exactly like this actress here. Great movie.
I was actually saying to my girlfriend when we were watching this together that woman has almost impeccable facial symmetry.
Mm-hmm. She's got dynamic symmetry. She does have a slight overbite, but that really doesn't matter because she's very sexy chick. Mm-hmm. Dr. Jordan, I would if I wasn't on microphone, I might be doing the same thing. So, Broken Word. This movie is a movie called The Temple, or Temple actually, and it's currently available on Netflix.
Yeah, I'll pull the Wikipedia up real quick for the chat.
Yeah, it's available through the chat.
Let's see here.
And Broken Word, I'll try to have that thing fixed on my Discord for you. I had fooled with it for hours, and then I talked to Brian, and he said it's this easy thing. So I feel like an idiot. I apologize for that. So all right, so we're looking at this really hot chick, and the main character. It's really hard to tell if it's really her or if it's. I think it's just the guy. I think it's the guy that's been her lifelong friend. They've known each other since grade school. They've been through thick and thin together. Schwarzenegger's Predator's excellent, and so was Starship Troopers. That's a really fun movie. And every time it's on, my wife just knows that I'll sit down and watch the whole fucking thing because I love it. And I have it on disc, of course. But that's one of those that if it catches me, I'll always watch it. So I'm waiting for the slideshow to kind of catch up with us because she wants to go to Japan. She's interested in looking up these temples. Why? We don't really get an idea for that, to be honest with you. And then we go to Tokyo, and it's 5 days earlier. From when they're talking to the guy in the wheelchair. And we don't know if the narration is reliable or not at this point. There's always the device of using an unreliable narrator to tell you a story. A great example would be Fight Club, right? We didn't realize that the narrator was, fucking schizophrenic until the last sequence of the film. This thing is really well paced and has the beats are right on mark, man. This thing just moves really well. We keep going back to the girl and the guy and then her boyfriend who's a dick.
He's a total dick.
Well, and everybody's been in this kid's in the main character's boots, right? We're the good guy, and we've got the beautiful friend whose boyfriend's a dick, and we'll fuck around on her and make her cry and hurt her feelings and shit, and then come back and she will tell you all about it, and of course, you're just a good friend, and you say, yeah, I love you and I care about you, and you're always there for her, but of course she always chooses somebody else.
I don't know what you're talking about, Irate. I'm a Chad.
Yeah. you rake you. I don't know, man. That's the way I was in my 20s, man, and I was fucking glad they were over. And you will be too in a couple of years. You'll realize, goddamn, man, those 20s.
I'm not 20 anymore. I'm 30.
That's what I was saying. When you get when you're deep in your 30s, you'll realize how shitty your 20s really were. Everybody goes, "Oh, these are the best days of your life," and it's like, not really.
Yeah, they're lying.
They as lying. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Now we got Chris, who's the main character. His name is Chris, right?
Yes, I think his name is Chris.
Because all we know is first names is Chris, and then the chick's name is Kate, and then I think the boyfriend's name is Jim.
Yeah, but I mean that doesn't really matter.
No, it's asshole. Yeah.
Asshole.
In my brain, he's an asshole. So
yeah, there's asshole right there. Talking to the lady with the stroller or whatever, the suitcase. Sorry,
the stroller.
But you can clearly, just by his body posture, you can tell that he's an asshole.
Right, he's got that preppy, kind of thing going on too.
And there's your beta in the background there.
Exactly.
So, as they're making this trip up the hill, they see all these weird things. They find a mine that's pretty much abandoned, and they also find a weird statue that has a dog head / I don't know what.
Yeah, they said it was a half fox, half female human shapeshifter god.
Yes.
And they don't tell you whether. And seeing this is the deal with pre-Shinto Japanese belief, their gods were not malevolent or benevolent. They were actually real fickle, and if they liked you, they liked you, and if they didn't like you, they didn't like you.
Exactly.
And they were really strange about that, which I thought. And they don't ever talk about that stuff in this movie, which I thought they would use the opportunity to kind of enlighten us on that. But I think it makes better for the surprises that we get later on.
Yes.
Because when it starts hitting you in the face, it starts hurting pretty fast. And that's what I really love about this movie is that. So we go, and for a little while, it looks like they're in Tokyo. They're enjoying downtown Tokyo, going out, having drinks, eating, just looking at the places, and then they come upon a store, and they find this book, and they look through it, and there's this temples in the book, and and like, so they're looking at it, and the girl's interested. She says, "Oh, I want this book. You know, I really want to go to these temples." Blah blah blah. We still don't know why.
Women.
Yeah, don't say that, man. But I mean, I don't know. We never find out why she wants to go so bad. And maybe maybe there's some kind of supernatural draw for her that's because this is not explained ever. And so if you're looking for a lot of answers, you're not going to find any, and it's a little frustrating. But then again, it's kind of cool too, because you walk away from this thing going, well, okay, is there going to be another movie? Because that's the first thing I thought is okay, is there going to be a sequel to this? Did you wonder that, man?
Not too much. I sort of got the idea that the reason she wanted to go see that specific temple and everything was that it was a power play. She was sort of trying to see how much the beta guy, Chris, was really into her.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what I got from it, because she knew that the Alpha Chad asshole guy was definitely not going to do any of that for her.
Right. And he would show up though because he was insecure about her being faithful to him with the lifelong friend, because he just couldn't fathom a male and a female just being friends without some kind of sexual component being to the relationship. Which is that made sense to me. That they had his character really targeted and fleshed out, and they had him pegged pretty fucking good. I thought they had all the characters that way. I think that Chris, the main character, I think that you could really identify and just know what was going on with him. So you're kind of right about the female. Now that I'm thinking about it. She's the one I knew the least about. And maybe that was a deceptive in a deliberate sense. So
yeah, that's really what I got from it.
Nifty. That's excellent insight. I like that. See, this is why we do this thing, because he just gave me a new way to look at this thing, and I appreciate that. That's awesome. But
I mean, it does sort of make sense in like the body language she uses when she's around both of them. She, when she's not around both of the males, then she is, she treats the beta guy Chris like a brother. But when she's around both of them, all of a sudden, she's like touching him, got a hand on his shoulder type of thing, sort of being more friendly with him than she was as she walked into that hotel there, which you guys saw earlier, and he was carrying all of her bags.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And of course, he's the only one that speaks Japanese, so he's doing, all the, he's buying the tickets. They're going to get on the train to go out so they can find the place, the little village. Once again, we're stuck with the village, and and it's interesting when he does pick up the book. He goes to this bar, and in a really good scene, and I think it was really important that they put this in the movie. And that's what I really liked about this, is that they kind of the things that were question marks in the ritual. They cleverly fixed those problems in this movie by a real simple answer. A dude in a bar, tells tells the guy, no, you don't read the book this way, you read it this way. And that book is about a place that'll mess with your head. It'll make you sick in the head, right?
Yeah.
And,
and it was great foreshadowing.
Right, exactly.
Like there wasn't nearly as much foreshadowing in the ritual. In this movie, there is plenty of foreshadowing. You know that something weird is going on.
Right. Well, especially when he goes back, the lady won't sell them the book at first. And then he goes back to the store. It's open. And it looks like, they were at a disco just before, and he watched her boyfriend grab some chick's ass and make out with her. And so he gets up, it's probably pissed him off. So he gets up to leave, and he ends up back at the store. It's open. And then all of a sudden this little kid pops in and scares the shit out of him. And he eventually sells him the book.
Yes.
And the kid is like, okay, what the fuck? Because the kid is kind of weird looking, and we see him again. And nobody questions it. Did you notice that?
No, yeah, nobody questions this weird little kid that's just around him all the time.
and of course there's a specific reason for that we find out. And right after he gets the book, the first thing he does is he goes to this vending machine that has beer cans, right? These little tall boys of probably bad Japanese beer, if it is my guess.
Yeah, probably.
And he drops in 3 coins. See, that's significant too in Japanese and in Chinese. The coins of the oh shit, what's that called? With the hexagrams.
I'm not exactly sure.
My brain wants to say
it's for luck, though, right?
It's you throw the 3 coins, and based on whether it's they're even or odd, you draw a line or a broken line, and you create a hexagram. And each one, there's 64 hexagrams, and that tells your fortune. And I think this is called. Give me a second. I'll look it up because I know as soon as I put in hexagram, I'll find it. Chinese. I Ching. That's it. It's the three coins are a symbol of the I Ching, and I'm not sure exactly how they pop up. But I wouldn't put it past them to put the, to put that symbolism in it, right? As soon as he starts to go for it, this old lady scares the shit out of him and busts out from underneath some garbage. It's like like she's homeless or something, right? And then he notices there's these really weird they're not quite grown horns, but it looks like they're just emerging from her skull.
Yeah, like imp horns.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not quite grown out. And then she bends down to get the coins, and when she looks back up at him, there's no eyes in her sockets, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And then after that, there's a whole bunch of these women walking with baskets on their heads, which is supposedly I'm not sure exactly, but I've seen that image before, so that's definitely a part of it. Probably is a Shinto thing. I'm not positive about any of this stuff. So if you do know more about this stuff, please let me know. I'd love to hear your.
Well, why don't we move on to the village portion of it, where they come across a village. Right,
and in the village, the guy, the bartender at the same bar where the guy says the book will make you sick in the head. He says that he grew up near that village, and so he gets the guy to tell him where the village is. And so they get on the train and they go to the village, and they walk up there, and they meet this lady, and she says, if you want to know about this village, you talk to this dude. And this old dude is sitting there with some oranges. Everybody in this town is a little touched, you can tell. And that's and I believe that's of course the effect of the temple. At the beginning of the movie, it talks about this disappearance of 6 children in 1968, and so that we come back to those kids are important, and of course the kid from the shop. And so they talked to the old man, and they said, well, there's a wise old man in town. His name is Hitachi, and to go see him because he went up on the mountain, had a vision, and he came back down with his eyes in his hands. And they thought it meant it symbolically, and he goes, no, and he puts the oranges in each hand nope, like this. Like he was actually holding his eyes physically in his hands.
Yes.
Yeah, and I call him Japanese Ray Charles for the movie.
Well, he did put those big glasses on.
Yeah, exactly. He had that, that whole Georgia, Georgia. I actually do a funny impersonation of him, but we won't go there right now. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I think though that another thing that we should mention is that meanwhile all this stuff is going on, right? Every couple of frames, you'll see a weird, almost like to bring up the movie Fight Club again, almost like how Tyler Durden was snipping in porn into the videos.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like a weird shadow or a weird child or some sort of weird long-fingered thing.
Yeah.
Is just in like a random frame out of nowhere in each scene, and it's clearly following them around.
Right, and of course, when it's occasionally noticed, the only person that's noticing it, of course, is Chris, the main character.
Yeah.
And so the movie progresses and it goes on. They crawl up this mountain with the kid leading them. Nobody directly refers to the kid, now, if you notice, except for Chris. And the kid's talking to Chris, and they end up at this. It looks like I don't know, maybe a wartime type tunnel system or some shit. I didn't understand that because it wasn't an area for a drainage system, right? But so maybe it was like a tunnel thing. For during the war, they used tunnels and pillboxes and etc. So maybe that was a former military deal, because high ground is, you always want to hold the high ground. So that's the only explanation I could find for that. So he talks to the old lady, and the old lady says to Chris, "Hey man, you want to come have some sake?" And of course, he says that, "Yeah, sure, man." And I like it. He says, "Can I take my camera?" And then she like does her hair, like, "Sure," And it's the subtleties like that. It was just it's the mark of a really caring team of movie makers. They even the smallest detail like that. I think the crew in The Ritual would have probably missed something like that.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Even though they had more money, they had better equipment, they had higher echelon actors wise. All that money that made that movie. Of course they went to Sweden, et cetera, et cetera. And but they I think probably this movie, the Temple, was made for maybe a half, if even that exactly of the Ritual. So my hat's off to our creators here, because they're just outstanding. So the dude wants to go explore the little tunnels. And it might have been smart for them to do that, but Chris talks them out of it, says, "No, it's going to be nightfall soon, and we want to see the temple, etc., etc." So they go up the hill. The kid says, "Yeah, you want to go up the hill," and they pass the effigy of the woman with the fox head, it's a fox head, and I can't remember what he says, but the kid doesn't tell him to pray until he gets to the temple, doesn't he?
No. He tells him to pray to a shrine that's basically for that god. Oh,
okay. And
they stop to pee, and it's a shrine.
Right, and then the kid, like, they do it the old school. I mean, it's for real. The way they do it, they do it. They slap their hands together, and then and that was just really accurate, good stuff. So they finally make it to the temple. The girl's delighted. They go in and explore it. It's got these creepy little idols in there that are made from wood. One has its face completely gouged out, and I'm like, what the fuck is that about?
Yeah.
But yeah, because there's something just not right about that. You know, even if it hadn't been taken care of, everything should have at least had a face. So that told me something right there. And let's see, are you looking at them in him in the bar?
Yeah, he's in the bar right now.
Yeah. So I was just thinking that the picture of the goddess being shapeshifter was really just a kind of ominous.
Yeah, it doesn't look friendly in any way.
No, not at all. You know, you really don't want to hang out with this thing. So
No, it's creepy.
exactly. So she goes in, and they go around, and then they go out there talking about something, and then they decide to spend the night there, and then she tells Chris. They build a fire, and they lay down. She goes, I haven't told him about his baby, about the boyfriend, the asshole. So apparently she's pregnant with the kid. Or do you think? See, it doesn't.
Well,
They never. Go ahead.
She did say she got an abortion.
She did have an abortion. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that I was confused on that then, because I'm old and I smell toast burning a lot. Okay, so she says she hadn't told him about it. So she goes inside the temple. Chris is out there, and she tells the dude, and he gets pissed and just goes off. And she and Chris end up in the inside the temple, and she she lays down, she spoons with him and pulls his arm around her, and then all of a sudden you hear the boyfriend in the outside in the distance, kind of Blair Witchy, screaming, and she goes, "Oh shit, I gotta find him," blah blah blah, and boop, she runs out, and then the dude comes back, and Chris gets pulled into the floor. And so the dude goes down into the floor with him, and there looks like there's a couple of skeletons in there, but they just go ahead.
Yeah, we probably so Chris gets pulled into the floor of the temple, but not by the temple or anything, by a weird long-fingered hand that reaches up from this thing's on a subfloor,
Right,
and it reaches up and grabs him and pulls him through two planks. And he's knocked out, and he's got like either messed up leg or it's broken or something like that.
It looks broken.
Yeah, it looks pretty broken. And the thing is that at that point, you get this idea. I got a foreshadow for you in my pants. Oh, Mr. Pickleson, Dr. Pickleson. But yeah, the at this point it looks like the main character's not going anywhere real soon. So he gets sort of propped up next to the fire, and they do the whole thing where they throw a fit, and she tells him she's had the abortion. She walks off, and boom, her and the beta dude are hugging in a blanket in the temple because it's dark and they don't really want to travel during the dark. Now they're hearing all these weird noises and stuff, and the boyfriend, Chad, we'll call him Chad because he's a Chad. He's angry and traipsing around this forest trying to get back to the village. Now, to be fair, logically he could have gotten back to the village. There was a path all the way back to the village.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he was just walking through the middle of this forest for no apparent reason.
Right.
You know? But he looks over and he sees the statue that's just sort of it's in a slightly different position, but he doesn't really notice it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he looks away, and then he looks back again, and there's no statue there anymore. It's just the mount that the statue was on. And then he looks away, and he looks back again, and you see this long-fingered, dog-headed demon thing that looks like it's carved out of stone and almost what would that be, like a chitin, a shell-like body structure around it with these long claw-like fingers, and it starts chasing him.
Yeah, man, and the way it moved and stuff looked really great, and
it was
it was a trick of light and with like really basic, what do they call, practical special effects, right? And the way they did it looked so cool and so fucking creepy, man. It was like, oh my God, that's so damn creepy. And so it was like, run, even though you don't like the dude, it's like, you know, still run. And we're looking at Ray Charles right now.
I'm betting that if we looked it up, that the difference between the monsters in the ritual and the monster in the temple is that the monster in the ritual was CGI, clearly CGI. I think maybe they may have used a model in the temple because it looked more realistic than CGI, and the only thing CGI about it may have been its head. You know what I mean?
Right. I see what you're saying. You know, a smaller scale kind of maybe puppet type thing.
Exactly, with like a green head.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm with you. I totally see it.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people really feel like the old-fashioned effects for monsters were better because it seems more realistic. Something about CGI has that uncanny valley look to it, where you're looking at it and you're like, that's not real though. You know,
right?
You know?
It looks too good.
Exactly, it looks way too good.
Right.
And this did not have that problem. You know what I it didn't look too good. It looked just right, like it was set perfectly in there.
And that's my brain gets real happy when it sees shit like that. You know, I'm old as fuck, man. I've seen everything in horror. I've seen everything done, and when I see something that tickles my oh yeah, I've never seen that before place, I like that. And this movie went there a lot of times for me. That's why I'm so excited about the movie I want to talk about next week. But anywho, let's get back to this. I know, man, I'm sorry, but I really the characters, you know, in the village, they're very they're likable and they're creepy at the same time. And then you've got all this stuff going on once they get up there. You know, he gets pulled in, and then the girl, you know, runs after the boyfriend when he starts screaming, and he gets locked in the temple. He goes out, and she tells him to go back in because, you know, there's something evil. And he goes in, he locks the door, and then guess what? He's got company crawling up through the floor. And it's the six missing kids from the beginning of the movie that they're only referred to. That you never see them. And one of them happens to be the little boy that he's been talking to the whole fucking time.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't have any eyes in their heads, of course, because, you know, that's just not, you know, you just can't have the eyes because that's just not creepy enough without it.
Right. Creepy little children with pale skin, no eyes, and weird demon teeth.
Yeah, and then the teeth come out, man, and it's like,
oh God.
It's like, yeah, they weren't fucked up enough. Now and it's like in the Japanese J-horror fashion, you know, the little creepy kids. Check that box out because, and it makes it that. See, you can say, okay, that's a trope, or you can say, but when I saw it, I said, that's fucking perfect.
Yeah.
You know, because it just fit just right in with it. You know, it's like, okay, we're creepy as fuck, but we hadn't gotten creepy enough, right? And I said, okay, now we're going to get you creepy, and they did it. And it's just really chilling sight. And then that's why this dude's face is all fucked up. Go ahead.
We should explain that. So, at this point in the movie, you realize the guy they're talking to, the original, you know, you sort of flash back and realize that they're talking to a guy in an oxygen plastic tank, and he's got no skin, and they're interviewing him, and this is all video footage they have.
Right.
That's where it really hits close to home, and you're like, oh,
right,
that's Chris the Beta that is got no skin and he's all messed up and he doesn't know what happened.
Well, and what's cool, man, is that the way his face looks, when you do get a kind of a good glimpse at it, it looks a lot like there's this old Twilight Zone episode called Eye of the Beholder, where the girl that played Ellie Mae Clampett on the fucking Beverly Hillbillies, man, that gorgeous blonde, had been having repetitive plastic surgery because they said she looked so hideous, right? But it was Ellie Mae. It was that gorgeous blonde, right? And then you see everybody in the doctors and the nurses and shit. They have all these fucked up faces. And
faces.
Right, and you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Because on that planet, everybody's ugly as fuck, and beautiful people live on an island. So, and that face that he has, it looks a whole lot like that face. It was just, that's where my brain went. It said, yes. And it was a nice nod. And you know.
It was like that and Freddy Krueger all at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to fucking, I want to fucking high five these motherfuckers that made this movie, because, you know, they've really landed a solid movie. And they've done it effectively, and you know, because I know a little bit about movie making, you know, it's like they've done it without spending a lot of money, and completely scaring the shit out of me, and doing a great job of it, you know.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
So, at that point, the girlfriend slash female protagonist, if you will, is searching for her boyfriend, who is running through the forest, and she finds her boyfriend after he's been attacked. His face has been smashed in by a rock, and she sees this weird demon thing that he was running from, and she starts running from it. She finds the caves that they were originally going to go through, and she gets lost in them. And the only thing you see to give you any idea of what happens to her is you see her lying there on the ground with her flashlight against the wall. She's crying. She can't find a way out.
She's in fetal position.
She's in the fetal position.
Right, and her back's to us.
And you hear this demon behind her, the weird clicking and like, yeah.
It's like,
and then the scene goes black.
Yeah, man. And the whole thing when she's running and the fucking flashlight's going back and forth, man, and it's got this really great little light thing. You know, I always love that kind of stuff if it's done really right. It can look shitty and it can look fantastic, and they got the fantastic once again. They and at the very end of the movie, right, this guy who, if you saw it earlier, from the back, his computer looked like it had this big star on it. So I was thinking that maybe he was some kind of international cop or something. The old man, you know, he tells him that they haven't found her, and that what you know, they're asking him what he's done with the body. And you can tell something happens within him. He grabs a pen and he kills the interpreter, and then he jumps out of the chair and starts running for the door.
Yep.
In a weird run hobble, but he's still I guess he's got a broken leg. It's 5 days ago, or 4 or 3 days ago, depending.
He could be in the cast. Who knows?
Yeah, but he hightailed it out the door, and that's pretty much where the movie ends. And we're going, okay.
Why didn't you tell them why he freaks out?
Well, I thought he freaked out because they told him that they accused him of doing all the killing.
Well, but before that, right before that, he's talking about the little kid that led us up to those cabins was in the hallway. Why don't you ask? What was his name?
That's right. Right.
Yeah. Why don't you ask the little kid what happened? Because he'll know what happened. And they're like, there's no little kid in the hallway. And that's when he freaks out. He grabs a pen. He realizes they think he killed everyone.
Right.
And he stabs the interpreter in the neck and runs out of the room.
And that scene in itself kind of reminds me of a movie from the 60s too called Equinox. And I won't go into it, but it's a tape recording summons demons and stuff and opens a portal into a hell-like realm, and one of the people gets possessed, and the main character they take his cross away, and he screams for it as the person that we know has been killed comes up to visit him, in the nut hut.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it, and that's something we're seeing. It's this movie though, the Ritual. Temple is the best out of the two, hands down. There's not even comparison. When you get, there is. What the Ritual has going for it is, like I said earlier, the production value. And the weirdness when they get to the village. Once they get to the village, it's all right, Yeah. And except for the fucking convenience store parts, man. I still I didn't think they were necessary, but I guess they. Go ahead.
That didn't need to exist. I do want to say though that there was one major downside to the temple that was sort of throwing me the whole movie, and this is why it lost points in my book. While the storyline, the cinematography, clearly the casting was well thought out, the dynamic between the characters was written well, that was all great, but the acting, when it comes to like Chris and the Chad guy, and even a little bit of the woman who played a main character as well, they were definitely not as good. Their acting wasn't as good as the Ritual.
They're not A-listers, man. That's for sure.
No, they aren't.
The main character in the Ritual was in Black Mirror, the Christmas episode. Yeah, so he's definitely done some stuff. So, and BBC usually they start out British actors. They definitely all hit stage and do Shakespeare and shit. So you have to get out of that door before you even can get into TV in Great Britain. So yeah, the acting was a lot better, especially the Chris character. I think the guy that did as good a job as I think, I don't know his level of training. He reminded me, this will tell you how old I am. He reminded me of early a cross between David Cassidy and Jeff Fahey back in the day when he was in his early 20s. He kind of resembled him to me, especially the David Cassidy part. My wife and I argued about what he looked like. And I think you're right, though. But I respect the fact though that it looks like the majority of the budget was blown on location.
Yeah.
And spent on that detail of definitely filming it for real in Japan, and not mocking it up, and to get that feel. And they probably found a real temple. They scouted locations and stuff. So I give them that. All right, I'm going to give my score first because that way you won't feel obligated. Because you recommended this movie to me, and I'm glad you did. I'm giving it at least an 8.5 or a good 9, a solid 9. It's worth seeing.
And I would still give it an 8 because it's above average. The acting was a little bit. It wasn't so great in some parts, just because. I don't know. To me, the actor that played Chris was a little bit bland at some times.
All right, so we'll say the Ritual. We'll give it a 7.25, and Temple between you and me.
You mean the Ritual was 6.5. We both said the same thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 6.5. And Temple is 8.5 combined.
Yes.
All right.
But they're definitely both the same genre. They're almost. You could almost say that they're identical storylines, in the sense that. You just put one in Japan and one in Sweden.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the budgetary differences and the acting differences, but story wise, they're the same plot, and almost identical outcomes. Over the two, if you have a choice where you can only see one or the other, definitely pick Temple. I'd recommend go ahead and see them both. Just so you can argue with me, and I'm okay with that.
Exactly.
Next week, I would like to look at Raw, a movie by this French. It's a French director's debut. It came out last year. It's about it's an interesting take on sisterhood and cannibalism.
Oh yeah, that sounds interesting.
It's one of those like the French have been blowing my fucking brains out this past like 5 years with stuff like Martyrs, Inside. Just nobody's even doing anything even close to it, to be honest with you.
Fair enough.
And I can't remember. There was this other Japanese guy. So, but yeah, I'll go ahead and put that in the thing. So people can be prepared next week when we come back. You got anything you want to talk? A couple minutes. We'll spend a couple more minutes and then we'll call it a day.
Well, did we? I don't know. Were we doing call-ins for this one or?
Well, if you want to, yeah, man, let's do that. I've got a. It should be if you click. Well, fuck, where'd the link go? Oh, well, let me see if it's, I've got it. No. Let me get my Discord link.
Pickleson, I'm looking at you.
All right, I'm gonna put it in chat. All right.
I'm waiting for a great Sargon impression.
Sargon's going to kill. He's going to tell you.
No. I've heard his is pretty spot on.
Yeah, that's my imitation of Bering doing Sargon, actually.
Oh, okay.
It's my imitation of somebody doing an imitation. So, Bering thought it was funny. He said I needed to do it at a higher pitch, so I do it a little bit higher now.
I think even higher than that, man.
Yeah, I can't do it. I can't go there.
Right?
I have to squeeze my testicles to get that one. I like them. And I'm not doing it today.
Fair enough.
Not today. So if anybody wants to join us, we'll phone lines are open for another 10 minutes.
Yep.
So shooting the shit about the movies, Netflix series that we are going to focus on down the line as soon as I can finish it and take some notes on it and shit is Altered Carbon. Are you finished with it yet?
I'm almost finished.
Right. I'm on chapter 8.
Keep in mind, Altered Carbon is also a book.
Right. I haven't read it, so
and I've read most of the book. I haven't quite finished it because, if I'm being honest, the series is better.
Really?
Yeah. But we'll get into that next week.
All right, and down the road, are you an Expanse fan or Legion? Have you checked either?
I read the books for The Expanse, and I've watched most of the series.
Isn't that fucking awesome, man?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm down. I'm down with it too. So we can. That's something else we can cover. The Expanse, maybe even just the first 2 years if people have to wait for the third season to come out. And what else did I just mention?
Raw.
Raw, and you can definitely make it through that one, and you might want to watch it immediately again because when I first saw it, I watched it 4 times in a row, over and over again to make sure I got it. Oh my God. It literally sent chills up my spine the first couple of there's these 2 scenes in particular when I went, oh fuck a duck. It was just the way the music this is one of those that uses music to like kind of Carpenter-esque in a way to accent what's going on. So the action is intensified by the music that's accompanying it. And I really like the way that it's used because that's the sign of a good movie too. And I noticed that with Temple, the audio was fantastic with headphones. Man. Yes, it is really, really a good headphones movie. And I mean, I was like, taking stills and stuff for this. What we were doing today, and I was just like going, damn man, this sounds great. And I was playing it at 1.5 speed, and I had to slow it down a couple of times just to listen to the music, and then of course the sound effects on layered within with the creepy. There's like this creepy atmospheric noise that goes on, and Ritual has it a couple of times too. So definitely catch these with the headphones on as well. I think that's a mistake a lot of people make with stuff. If you don't have like 6.1, surround sound type stuff, is that headphones are going to be a must for that. If you got anything you want to shill while we're
nothing this week. I know last week I said we were having a live stream and I had to cancel because I forgot my dad's birthday, but not his actual birthday. Luckily, I'm not that bad of a kid. But yeah, I forgot that he was having a birthday dinner that night. So the drunk stream will be on again, not this Friday, but next Friday, and I'll remind you guys next week as well.
That's right, and I'll definitely give you a good intro into it from the cream stream. I'm sorry. I had to wrap the cord up there. I was getting entangled in me feet there, Lou. Just making it. But yeah, so tonight I'll be with Chaos 120 again. I'm going to have to get my schedule situated because doing every night with them in addition to everything else I'm doing is really stretching me out, and I can tell.
I can see that.
I can tell my blood pressure is getting up a little bit, and I got to keep it under control and shit because I'm fucking old. And then after that, I forgot I had arranged something with the Megans of the Zoo, which that's an interesting bunch. You should check those guys out occasionally if the cunt stream's not doing it for you. Definitely check out. starting an hour before Cunt Stream, and then an hour into it is the Chaos 120. And then after that was the Millions of the Zoo. So I now recommend both of those streams if you are burnt on the Cunt Stream, or if the Cunt Stream's not on, in lieu of. So
yeah, I noticed it wasn't live streaming the last like 2 days or so.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on there. I try to stay in all the loops. It's like for some reason I've kind of contacted everybody in that 10 o'clock loop, or what I call the 10 o'clock loop, the 10 to midnight here. But would be Eastern, would be 11 till actually 2, or 10 till 1 here, or 8 till 11 your time, Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're packed, dude. You're a Cali boy, aren't you?
Yep, I am.
Lucky bastard. Only in that you can run and go and get, weed legally and get stoned whenever you want to.
You could do that in Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and I think even Nevada and maybe Texas. I'm not sure if it's legal there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm thinking about moving to Nevada.
I hear you, man. The taxes are they're a lot easier on the state taxes for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because gambling kind of pays all that shit, which is kind of cool. Florida doesn't have income tax either, which is well, they didn't. I don't know. That you never know. They changing shit, but the last time I checked, they didn't.
For sure.
And so we are now talking the shit. So we've got. I got another. I'm looking at another 4 minutes. Anybody come on, hit that Discord link and come on in and say hey, and I'll yank you in here, and we'll shoot the gip. Jack, if you want to come back, just hit the Discord link, if you want to, and we'll hang and kick the bobo and talk about whether you've seen the movie or not, and whether seeing this has given you the urge to see either of these movies. I'd like to know that too.
So, what did you think about the creature in what was it called? The Ritual.
The Ritual.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. Something I recommend everybody subscribe to is Oats Studios here on YouTube. It's actually like an experimental thing that the guy that did his name is Blomkamp, and he did District 9 and Chappie. I can't, and a couple other movies, but he's got an experimental studio that's based out of Canada, and the stuff that they're doing, the creature in one of the shorts reminded me of this thing, which like it was using human parts of human bodies as part of its body, which is something I'm starting to see. There was a Japanese cartoon that I'd seen that was like a creature that was made out of human bodies too. I don't know. It looks like that's kind of a maybe a future trope.
Yeah.
A trope in making. Let's see.
Exactly.
But yeah, I thought it was cool, man. The way it looked, the way I thought they did it. I don't know if you remember. Did you see the newest version of Mad Max?
I have not.
Fury Road. There's a scene.
Oh wait, yes, I have. Yes, I'm sorry.
You remember the scene when they're going through that desert where it's like a goop. It's not quite desert and it's not quite water. And those dudes on those stilts and those hand things, those extensions on their arms, were walking like a four-legged. I think it was somebody like that, and then they built the CGI creature around it. So in that I think that's kind of how they did that. It was a lot of green, green stuff, like you were saying earlier. But it definitely was CGI'd, and I thought it was a good idea. I think it could have been a lot creepier, and and a lot, they should have put more thought into it, because the idea of the crucified reindeer earlier on in the movie, that was like a perfect what word am I looking for? That was like would have been a perfect shrine to this thing if it was done better, I think. I think it was meant to be an effigy of some type of deer, or you remember Pan's Labyrinth?
It was clearly symbolism.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was supposed to be a Pan type, pagan god. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine on that one, dude.
That's the one thing that probably needs to be said about the ritual, is that while the temple is open-ended at the end, and you don't know whether or not there really were any ghosts or anything, or if it's just that guy that has really killed all of his friends in the woods and he's just hallucinating.
Right.
The problem, like, there's two possible endings, but the problem with the ritual is, you do know that this guy's friends are all dead. You have no idea whether or not that's really a god, and you have no idea what's going on at all.
Right.
When he's shouting at it at the edge of the woods that it can't apparently leave for some reason.
But man, we forgot to talk about that, because that was like, what the fuck? So apparently it can only live in the woods?
Yeah, I don't know. That was the thing. It's like, it's what the fuck? What do you what? How does this crazy mystical beast that's sacrificing creatures and deer and stuff, he can't grab a single guy that's running from him in the woods?
Exactly. And Jack T. Ripper, I wanted to let you know that was kind of the idea that Brian and I had about this little deal that we're doing, is to focus on stuff that's easily accessible on Netflix. Is one of the easiest places to see stuff. That's not, you don't have to fucking subscribe to or have cable to watch it. So that was kind of the idea behind it, and the idea is also to make this a call-in show, so people can come in and talk about this stuff if they want to. That's why I put the Discord link in there. So if you want to pop in, you're welcome.
I think maybe a good idea would be to put up a Twitter poll for the next movie we do. Not next week, but the week after that.
Okay.
And see what everyone else wants to see us talk about.
Okay. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because I would love to do that. It's like I wanted to do the Raw thing because I wanted you to turn you on to something, because you turned me on to Temple, and you were definitely right. This is far better than the ritual. I was the other day. The reason that I'm talking like this is because the other day I was mentioning to Brian that I wanted to talk about this movie because I thought it was so fucking awesome, and he said, "No, man, you need to see Temple. It's better." And I said, "Oh, okay." So and then I, by the end of the movie, I'm going, "Fuck yes, man." If those dudes were in the room with me, I would definitely be high fiving their asses, because it was good, and for Netflix, look, I think it's a great release. I think they need to shill it a lot better. More people need to check this thing out, and I think that's kind of the idea of what we want to do on this thing. And Dr. Pickleson says Japanese people aren't real.
Now, see, Dr. Pickleson is incorrect here. It's not that Japanese people aren't real. It's just that originally there were 2 Japanese people, and then they cloned themselves till they had an entire island nation.
I don't know about that either, man. I'm going to leave that to bigger minds than mine. But but yeah, it's we're all weeaboos, as they say. I don't know.
Exactly.
I love Japanese stuff, and was really disappointed at Netflix. How about this? How disappointed on a scale of 1 to 10 were you in Netflix's version of Death Note?
You know, people are going to lynch me for this. I never.
You've never seen?
I never read the book or the manga or whatever it is,
Right.
and I liked the movie.
All right. You said, okay. Well, then that's fair, man. You know, I think that if they hadn't have made it the main character, see, the people that are attached to it, that like it, see, in the Japanese version, Light is the exact opposite of the dude that we saw in the American version. He just got out of high school. He made it into he's in law school. He's an expert tennis player. He's very athletic. He's very, you know, a jock with all this this internal, you know, his dad's a cop. He's got this good, you know, everything's in black and white for him, right? And that's one of the main reasons.
Sorry, I hate to stop you, but your slideshow is exactly on what you were talking about.
What? Oh, the very end?
The pig face.
Yes. You see it now?
Yeah, that is directly a nod to that.
So, all right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And the kids, see that I'd totally missed all that. I mean, I didn't miss him saying that. I just had forgotten that he had, you know, that they had said that. That made him drop away. But yeah, that's when I saw that. It's immediately what I thought of, and then now it's flashing back to that.
Yeah. But
it says Pickleson said only like 3 anime ever. Don't care out of 10. Akira's a fantastic movie, dude. It looks fantastic. The storytelling is just, I'm not going to get into it. I like it. I'm a big Akira fan. But
we
go ahead.
We could always do an anime review stream for Akira, and we can invite Weibo Jones or something.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that that's her name. That sort of implies that she's going to know about it, right?
I don't think she knows anything about anything Japanese at all. I think that I think she picked the name out of from this movie. I can't remember what she told me, but maybe she was just blowing smoke up my ass. I can't tell with her, man. She's like a kidder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, she'll punk your ass. Akira it can look like it doesn't make any sense at all. I agree. And the manga is excellent, but you know I understand that you don't read backwards. That's just evil.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll wrap it up on this point. It's been an outstanding amount of fun on this side.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah, man. So everybody, you know, just keep your minds open. If there's anything you want us to focus on, either shoot me or Brian a DM, and we'll definitely try to make it happen. Because what we want this to be is as interactive as possible. That's kind of the idea I want to have behind this thing is to eventually turn it into a talk show, where people call in or you know come in through the Discord. And as soon as all the bugs are worked out and people figure out there's a phone app that'll allow people to call Discord from their phone or get at least access it through their phone and not get a fucking loop. That's what's happening right now is that they're getting a huge feedback loop when they call in. So, and on that, we are going to, I guess, we're going to call it a show. I want to thank everybody for coming. This is IRATE Prostate saying keep kicking the patriarchy's ass, and keep hanging where you've been hanging. Cyberspace cadets, it's a beautiful, beautiful place to be. And I like my friend Brian. Say goodbye, friend.
Thug life.
As always.
Mm-hmm.